All right, my day of play. 3 great conversations today, starting first with a YA author, young adult. Maureen Johnson loves to create mysteries, and she really dives deep into that. And then we check in with MP Woodward. This guy, what a great lucky man. He's the latest author to be a part of Tom Clancy's circle of great storytelling. And then we wrap things up with Frank Figliuzzi, a former agent for the FBI, and we're talking heavy-duty security, not only here in the States, but around the world. Hello and good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Errol. This is Iris.
Hey,
how are you?
Doing very well. How about you?
I'm doing good. It's just rainy today, which is fine with me. I don't care.
Yeah, you keep it. I don't want it.
I know you I know you don't. What will be the air date for today? Today is Maureen. I think her name is Maureen Johnson.
That's
Hold
it,
on just
yeah.
a second. I'm pretty sure it is.
Yep, that's what it is. Yeah, let me see here. Let me get my program log here.
And the air date will be...
I'm getting to it right here. I have Maureen Sunday morning.
And she's ready. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Moment. You're welcome.
And we've been joined by Errol Collins.
Hello and good morning, Maureen. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. Thank you so much.
You must have had a lot of fun putting this book together because, I mean, first of all, you deal with a modern-day mystery, but you also travel into the past. And I love it when authors can do that. They can put us in 2 different places at the same time.
I find that I like working in dual timelines, but I think it makes sense with mysteries because mysteries are always about going back into the past, whether it's an hour or 100 years, and rewinding and taking it apart and trying to figure out how you got to where you are.
How do you do your research for something like that, just to make sure that the continuity is spot on?
Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, it's just a lot of general knowledge and reading, and then once you kind of narrow down what you want to do, then it's in-person research. Like in this case, the book takes place in Rousing Island.
Mm-hmm.
So I go there, I look around and mundane, everything from, just sometimes staring at the sidewalks, what's on the street, to going from island to island, going into the houses, trying to pick, because sometimes what you need is really, really small. Like, you never know what it is you're going to need. You pick up little things as you go. Just, a doorknob, a whole building, a doorknob, a feeling in the air, a local food. You never know what it is you're going to need to do.
Where do you find the inspiration to create something like the Ralston family and then a modern day Marlowe? I mean, because it's 2 completely different things, but at the same time, they all come together in harmony.
Well, it's Marlowe and the Modern Story, which sounds like I've just written some sort of weird, Nickelodeon sitcom there. But I always start with why the thing happened. And because murder is a big deal, even if you're writing a murder mystery, which is a lighthearted kind of a thing, weirdly, you always have to start with why. And then I build out to the who and the how. And I kind of build from that center outwards. The Ralston family in the past, there's loose historical precedents I'm using there. Because what you find out that the family was into in the past was very, there's a lot of stuff that happened in our past that we simply do not talk about and don't want to talk about, or that we collectively have forgotten was really common. For example, the family is very into eugenics. Eugenics was accepted day-to-day practice. Like, it was just like, and you could go to a eugenics tent at the state fair. You could get yourself a corn dog, and then you could go to the eugenics tent and get your baby's head measured. That is real. That is what used to happen. So this was a belief system. This was, it's also, he's Philip Ralston. The Ralston family has 6 older children and 1 younger children. So 2 children die in the past, 1 of the older children and a younger child. Mm-hmm. He adopted his 6 children as a doctor in World War I. So there's a lot about how families were put together, what the political situation was like in the United States, It's a real mix of things. I mean, I guess I'm just, when you're a reader, I've always been interested in that period in history.
Yeah. Well, I'm always interested in mansions, and all my entire life, if I read about anything about a mansion, I need someone to take me inside, and that's exactly what you do. It's almost like wearing those VR goggles. You take us inside by way of your paragraphs.
I'm very exacting. I like a map. I like a chart. There's a map in all my books, all the mysteries, and they always mean something. I have to really feel like I understand exactly where everything takes place. I don't know, like this might be a theater. I work in theater as well, and and wrote for it. There's something about having to touch the things to know, like, this is exactly how long it takes to cross the room. This is how you get from one floor to another. I feel like I have to know these things. In some of the books I go you go on eBay and you buy old maps. Like for my True Zebia series, which takes place in Vermont, part of it takes place in the 20s. So I went online and you find a bunch of maps. So you know exactly what roads were there. But mansions are kind of a personality made manifest. They are wealth. They are personality, they are display, they are house, but they are also like, they're not just a house for your family. It's a house for like all your servants, all of these back stairs. There's designed part of the houses that you're not supposed to see if you live in them, which is strange. That's not how we normally think of houses.
Speaking of maps,
those houses have a backstage.
Yes, they do. Speaking of maps, my wife and I had a really deep conversation about your style of writing. She says that you leave breadcrumbs. And so I always want to make sure that I can spot a breadcrumb when you leave it for us, because it's almost like you're pulling us into the story and you give us something to hold on to so that we can grow with the story.
Yeah, these are fair play mysteries. And by that, it means that they are solvable by the reader. You don't need outside information. And the perpetrator or perpetrators are always introduced early enough that, if it's a 400-page book, they don't come in on 398. You know who they are.
Yeah.
What you do is I work from the back. I always write, I know exactly how everything ends. I write kind of case files about it. I write why everything happened. I break it all down. And then I kind of pull threads out of that. So I pull back to front, rather than kind of, I also don't write in order. So I'll kind of pull the things I want and write those sections.
Oh my God. That sounds like a songwriter, because a lot of songwriters will tell me.
It's our.
That's almost like a songwriter, because songwriters.
I was going to say it's our job to lead you.
Yeah. That's unbelievable. Yeah, because songwriters will sit there. They may get a guitar riff here. They may get a lyric over there. Somehow, some way, it all comes together. And that's what I'm learning with you, is that when you build from the back first, it's like, oh my God, that's so inspiring.
I've never written a book in order. But certainly with mysteries, I've never written a book in order, ever. I don't know how to write in order. Everybody writes in their own way. And the thing is, you also learn to write every book by writing that book. Kids often ask me, like, how do you learn to write? Well, I'm like, you write a lot. You have to write all the time, and you have to fail constantly.
Yep.
Because you fail writing that book until you've written it. So you have to learn how to write each book by writing that book.
Wow. Where can people go to find out more information about you, Maureen? Because, this book right here is your first standalone book, but, you've got a series out there like you wouldn't believe.
I have a lot of standalone books. This is a standalone mystery. You can go to MaureenJohnson.com. You can go to Maureen Johnson Books on Instagram, or Maureen Johnson on Twitter. And also Maureen Johnson Books on TikTok, which is new and in development, but Instagram a lot more.
I love it. Please come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
Thank you so much.
Will you be brilliant today?
Hi, this is Mike.
Hi, this is Arrow. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm great, Arrow. Thank you for calling.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk with you because people are talking about this book, dude.
Oh, thank you. And I love to talk about it too.
What is the process of this book? Because I'm telling you, there's something about this one right here that I'm saying, this one's mine. I don't want to share this, but you have to, because it's like a movie and a great piece of music. You've got to be able to share it.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, in terms of process, I think it begins with thinking about the Tom Clancy brand and entering that universe and honoring those characters and building a story that would make the late great Tom Clancy proud.
Yeah, and you go on with Jack Ryan on this, because we've seen Jack Ryan on TV. We've got Jack Ryan back in this book. It's almost like everything is coming together like a piece of beautiful music.
I like to think so. In my background, one of the things I did before writing full time was I worked at Amazon Prime Video and actually worked on that Jack Ryan.
This go around, and I like the way that you've kind of connected it to this modern day way of spying.
Oh yeah, thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. The one of the things I wanted to highlight was that right now we are engaged in a very tough battle with China when it comes to industrial espionage. The FBI has spoke about it, opened thousands of investigations into it, and I wanted to highlight that in this case with battles on which we're very dependent from China.
Hindley Associates. This is going to be new to readers because they're the ones that hired Jack Ryan to locate an earth mining company in Vietnam. Now, how did they get in the picture?
Well, actually, if you go back into when Tom Clancy established Jack Ryan Jr. as a character, he established Henley Associates as a company as well.
Yeah.
That operates something that they call the campus, and so it does off-book operations for the director of national intelligence, who's Mary Pat Foley, and it is self-funded. So it is basically a private equity company, and they were looking at an investment in a rare earth mine in Vietnam, thinking that it would be a good investment as companies look to decouple from China.
You know what's really interesting is that you explaining that, it opens up my mind to this is happening in the real world, these private companies, because I know some people that are over there in Ukraine right now. They're private companies helping out.
Yeah, that's one of the themes of the book is that, and you mentioned new way of war. I think private industry and defense are getting more and more intertwined. There has always been a defense industry, but now defense is much more than just weapons and bullets and bombs. It is really about computing power and technology, and you're right. We see that in Ukraine where Starlink, a SpaceX product, was instrumental in powering the drones that Ukraine used, the naval drones, to sink the Moskva, the mighty Russian battleship. So we more than ever, we've seen technology just kind of blur the lines between private enterprise and warfare. How
much of your naval intelligence is in this story? Because, I mean, you bring some experience to these lines.
Well, thank you for that. I spent quite a bit of time. This story takes place in Southeast Asia, and the Philippines, and Vietnam, and Hong Kong. And I spent quite a bit of time in that region as an intelligence officer. And one thing that I believe all good fiction has partly is about a mystery. Readers need to kind of keep going and guessing as to, hey, what's really behind this right up to the end. And through these characters, they unfold the mystery through intelligence agencies. And I do think my background there helps in terms of the resources they have available and the authenticity in terms of how that might really work.
Teacher, sometimes, because there are things that I read in this book going, oh man, that's pretty interesting. I'm going to look this up on Google.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. I do think that Tom Clancy established this genre called techno thriller, and back in the 80s and 90s, that was a new thing, and using technology and showing readers like, hey, this is how this really works. So I wanted to put the techno back in techno thriller. I think my background in the tech industry helped a bit with that, but I never want to feel like a teacher. I want it to be very integral to the story.
Yeah, because to me, it's theater of the mind. That's what I love about your writing, is that I can see it while I'm reading it, and sometimes I have to go back to the paragraph and do it again because my picture didn't go right.
Yeah, and that. But by the way, that is something that inspired me long ago as a kid when I was reading that theater of the mind. And I think today, with streaming media, there's so much content out there and so much competition for entertainment, just for eyeball share. And I really hope to bring some of that back to the novels and make reading entertaining and fun again, and hopefully reinvent the medium a little bit and bring some of my streaming media background into that, because I sort of know what readers are expecting.
Yeah, you really do. You give us that opportunity to create reading time. And I know my wife and I we became addicted to that during the COVID lockdown, that every day at a certain time, it's time to read a book. There's no TV, there's no music, there's nothing. We have to read our books.
I think it's such a special thing to do, and something that I hope that parents that do that pass that on to their children. I watched my own kids do that. I just think it helps develop the imagination, and it helps develop concentration, and you learn things and you experience different worlds, and it is fun. It's fun to write, and it's fun to read.
When you allow Jack Ryan Jr. to develop his character and stay one step ahead of the Chinese, I recently talked with an author who says that she writes her books from the backside forward. How do you know what's going to happen, and then you've got to fill in the blanks?
I do. The standard sort of dividing line is people say, are you a pantser, as in a seat of the pants writer, or a plotter, and one where you write out the plot? And I believe in starting with an outline and knowing, exactly how the story is going to go. And I really do the outline chapter by chapter. Yeah. As I'm writing, I almost always change the outline or come up with a different idea or something like that. But it always follows a broad framework.
How does it change you now that you've associated yourself with Tom Clancy? Because it's like each radio station I've gone to, I'm a much different person. What about you when it comes to writing?
Yeah, I think my own writing style, I think, lent itself really well to coming into the Clancy verse, in that I was already doing espionage and involving technology and intelligence work. I think that I studied the books very carefully. Of course, I pretty much had read all of them and grew up with them, but I studied them carefully in terms of character interaction, and I would say it's analogous to, if you were a screenwriter and they brought you into, hey, here's the Marvel series and here's the next one, you might you honor those characters, and you reference their past, and you keep them acting the same way, but you still want to bring something a little bit new and a little bit fresh to it.
Speaking of Marvel, are you shocked that there hasn't been a graphic novel yet around Jack Ryan Jr.?
Well, I don't know if I'm shocked as so much as I'm probably relieved, because that would make it that much harder. We have to make sure that we are keeping continuity between the characters, between Jack Ryan Sr. and Jack Ryan Jr. And there are 20 books out there, and so I was very careful to make sure that everything stayed in sync with previous works.
How do you keep Jack Ryan Jr. from not aging out? Because we see that on television shows, but we're not seeing it on The Simpsons. It's still Bart Simpson. How are you keeping Jack Ryan Jr. at this age? I did age him a little bit. Really? So keep in mind, there's Jack Ryan Sr., who is now in his 70s, and he's in the Oval Office, and he appears in this book, and one of his compatriots is a guy named John Clark, the old experienced SEAL, and he appears in this book as well. Jack Ryan Jr., though, it's a little more like the John Krasinski character, from Prime Video, in that he's in his mid-30s, and one of the things that I wanted to do in this book was to give him some issues around that age, to make him slightly less impetuous, to make him have some family responsibilities and leadership issues he has to deal with, and romantic relationship, and all those kinds of things that, a talented young man of 35 might face. God, I would love to be a fly on the wall inside your writing space, because for you to even think about it like that, I mean, you've got to have one of those moments. It's like, I like it. I need to twist it here just a bit.
Oh, for sure. And what I find is that if you can really develop your characterizations well, if you can get into the heads of those characters, that some of those twists emerge by themselves, because you can think, well, this guy wouldn't know that. And if he didn't know that, what might he do in error, right? Those kinds of things. And so for me, that's really, really fun. That's why I love the job.
Wow. Where can people go to find out more about you, man? And first of all, before I even go there, is it your voice on Audible, or did you have to get an actor?
Yeah, I don't. Well, you can hear my voice. Yeah, I'm not qualified to do the good work that they do on Audible. So no, it's an actor, and I'm not that familiar with who did this one. I know in my other books, it was an actor named John Lindstrom in the Handler series, and I tell you, one of the funnest things that for me was my first book when it came out was going for a walk and listening to it on Audible and being just shocked. Like, hey, I wrote this?
See, and that's why I want listeners really to pick up writing. I mean, even if they don't get published, they can record their voice and just go for that walk, because there's something about hearing the human voice read what came from you.
Yes, and I remember studying writing very early on, and some of the advice in one of the books I read said, "Look, it's good when you read it and it sounds like somebody else wrote it." and after 15 drafts or whatever it takes to finally get to the finished product, I often do feel that way, especially with Audible.
All right, where can people go to find out more about you, man? MPWoodward.com, and I'm on Facebook at MP_Woodward. Same with Instagram. Are there going to be any future Tom Clancy books with your name on it?
Oh, heck yeah. One is the second one is already under wraps, and will come out in about 7 months. It's called Line of Demarcation, and I'm right now working on the third one, and it's a tremendous honor and privilege, and I'm just loving it.
Oh, then I expect to talk to you in about 7 months.
You better. Yeah, I hope so.
Well, you be brilliant today, okay, sir?
All right. Thank you, Arrow. It's been great to be on with you.
Thank you.
What's up, Funky Fresh?
Hey, what's going on with you today, man?
Oh, just another beautiful day in the apple.
I love it.
Frankie, it's all yours, hard out at 19.
Hello and good morning, Frank. How are you doing today?
Yep, I'm back.
There you go. How you doing today, Frank?
I'm well and glad to be with you.
Well, I'm glad to be with you, too, because I think that we need to be educated. And I think that we need to learn more about what's really going on and not what we're seeing in the headlines and on clickbait.
I can help with that.
We have got the Democratic convention right around the corner, but people, all they're doing is they're looking in the past, they're seeing things that happened in the past, and they're trying to predict their future. And I always say, quit trying to write a story. How do you find your calm, Frank, when it's so easy to just write a story that hasn't even happened?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I think the media, and this is all sides of the media spectrum, is in the business of generating anxiety and playing a role in what I call polarization for profit. And, that's based on really putting fear in people. I think there's legitimate concern to be had today. There's no question about that. Look, you could argue that our democracy is being threatened. And, you can argue about which side is threatening it. But, yeah, we should be concerned. But should we be in an all-out panic and fearful? I look back at history. This is how I get my calm. I tell people we've been through a civil war in this country and survived. We've been through a violent civil rights era. We've been through anti-Vietnam protests. The far left radical extremists like Black Panthers were blowing up police stations. There was a time in the 70s where there was a minimum of 10 bombs going off a day in the United States, including at the Capitol, the State Department, and the Pentagon. People forget history. And then with regard to, political conventions, which we're here to talk about today, the security of it in part, 1968 Chicago, violence, police officers beating up protesters and vice versa, anti-Vietnam. We'll get through this. We've got to be active and engaged and vigilant, but I think fear is counterproductive.
Yeah, and it seems like we're all jumping onto that smartphone as quickly as possible because we want to be available the very moment something happens. And when something doesn't happen, that to me is what affects another human's imagination as well as their drive in life. It's like something should be happening. It should be. And you're right. It drives up our anxiety.
Yeah, anxiety doesn't help us at all because it often paralyzes. You're paralyzed. You need to get off the couch, get away from the phone, get active. If you're worried about something, do something about it. Volunteer, donate, go be an election helper at a voting precinct or polling place. There's lots you can do. Bring people to the polls. Teach a kid to read. How about that? That's a good one. And so, that's where we are. But sadly, look, my job, 25 years in the FBI, assistant director of counterintelligence, and now today I'm in my 7th year of being a national security analyst and talking head with the NBC News Network. And, my job is to, sadly, identify the threats and the risks and talk about them. And that's my role, but I also try to put them in proper context.
Now, intelligence has changed, and it continues to change so much globally. I mean, it's more than just, someone that's made a threat in a newspaper. It's more than somebody who's made a threat on the internet. How do you embrace today's intelligence when it's constantly changing, especially when the former president says that he was hacked last week?
Yeah, and boy, the indicators are that for sure that the government's telling us that Iran is clearly launching malware and cyber attacks on both parties. By the way, they've attempted it reportedly with the Harris campaign as well, and reportedly they succeeded with regard to the Trump campaign. We'll wait and see what the outcome is. But it's not just Iran, my friend. It's China and Russia and North Korea all trying to mess with us. This is the new norm. This is not a temporary blip on the intelligence radar screen. So the job of the IC, the intelligence community, to get out in front of this. And boy, you talked about, learning things that aren't in the public eye. Let me tell you something. There is a silent battle going on in the cyber warfare area every day between the U.S. government and these adversaries. The last election was an all-out, gloves-off fight in the cyberspace to protect the election. And we won the cyber war there, but I'm telling you, it's the new norm.
How does Chicago prepare for what's going to be happening next week? I mean, I've read that they're going to move the fences back, but still, you've got those little areas where a lone actor, could step in and do something that's totally out of the normal.
Yeah, let's talk about the security footprint for Chicago. 2,500 Chicago police officers assigned to the immediate perimeter there, including the Milwaukee Police Department that just successfully dealt with the RNC, and then big, significant development. Both of these conventions are designated National Security Special Events, NSSEs. What does that mean? It means the feds have got this. The feds are bringing all those three-letter agencies in the federal government are coming with their entire toolkit. Some of those tools are even highly classified. So what kind of things do they detect and deter? Look, nuclear, radiological, dirty bomb, biochemical attack, improvised explosives devices, drones, aircraft, all of that being brought to bear on securing the DNC in Chicago.
Yeah. You talked about those 2,500 people that Chicago is putting in there. What about the communication? Because with the shooting that happened with the former president, I mean, they said that there was a communication breakdown.
Boy, you are right to raise this communication issue. We may be in 2024, but by God, the old-fashioned radio failure and different frequency thing is still with us, and I am extremely frustrated because it was something that when I was an agent, I thought someday this thing will go away, this frequency ridiculousness. And we used to solve it in the old days by literally partnering, and you'll see this in Chicago, by the way. It's fail-safe. You partner a local detective with the FBI agent or the Secret Service agent and a county guy or a state trooper and an ATF agent. They each have their own radio in their god darn hand, right? And that's how, you want to get fancy or you want to get simple. If I'm broadcasting on my radio frequency to the feds and the trooper is to the state and local police, then we've got it working. But it's supposed to be more sophisticated than that. And you're supposed to be able to flip a switch and be given that federal radio, right? Because it's encrypted. The feds are encrypted. That's part of the problem. And so you literally have to hand the federal radio to that local partner so that they have the radio too. And then you collect all the federal radios when you're done with the event. Not rocket science, but by God, we seem not to be able to get it right.
We're putting a lot of focus on the Democratic convention, but what about Election Day? That's definitely heavy on my heart because I don't think we have enough police to protect those precincts.
Yeah, we talk about the iconic targets of the Capitol. We saw that horror take place on January 6th. It was ugly. But I'm saying this, the soft target is what we should be looking at. And the softer targets are local and state. And that's where the election takes place, at precincts, at county, where the county locations are, where you're literally collating and counting the vote. The Supreme Courts of each state, where they're going to inevitably have to weigh in on whether something went bad or not. That's where I'm worried. And look, the tone is set by a leader. If you have a candidate who already is projecting, I'm not going to accept the results, right? If I lose, they cheated. That's the equation right now. He's telling us what's going to happen.
Yeah.
We've got to get ready for that, not only on the legal side, but on the security side. And so that local county security is your local county sheriff and police department. Are they ready for this? I know that the Department of Homeland Security is coming alongside them, training them, equipping them. But listen, if you've got a sheriff who's saying, I'm politically elected, I'm not getting involved in this mess, I got to please my constituents, well, then we have a problem.
Yeah, there really are a lot of copycat leaders in the different individual cities and stuff like that, where they feel like they can get away with saying things and doing things because somebody else has already done it. And you're right, it's those little copycats that really kind of bring fear to a community.
Copycats after Butler, Pennsylvania, and the attempted assassination are a real concern. And, very quietly, if it ever makes the media, it's usually on, page 5. The FBI has been taking down, with Secret Service, other actors who have tried things. I mean, and let's talk international terrorism threat. A couple of months ago, the FBI arrested 8 Tajiks from Tajikistan affiliated with ISIS, who came in through the south border, and they were going to do something, and they were taken down. More recently, Taylor Swift had to cancel her concert tour in Austria because of an ISIS-related terror threat. Very young men radicalized online. That kind of thing happens here. We do have online radicalization, domestic terror and international terror. That's a tough thing to thwart as well.
I'm still, even with the Taylor Swift concert situation, I'm still can't figure out why it took so long for anybody to really make their move. It seems like it was like a watch and see kind of thing, and then they jumped on it.
Oh, gosh, what a colossal failure that was by the Secret Service. And, the finger pointing, we gave that building to the locals. Well, look, let me tell you something. The buck stops with you. It's your event. And you identified in your advance visit that building was a close-in, elevated threat. And you handed that, not only did you hand that to the local and county authorities, but you put it outside your perimeter. Mm-hmm. So I think when all is said and done in this investigation being done by the DHSIG, we're going to find that for a very long time, the Secret Service has been under-resourced and has been handing off responsibilities to local police way too much. And so, that very weekend they were handling an event with Jill Biden. They were staging in Milwaukee for the RNC. How many protectees and events can they really handle at once? And I think the dirty little secret is not many without handing off and over-relying on local police.
Yeah, because doesn't that lessen the strength and the experience? The more and more events you have, you have less experience out there.
Well, you get really burned out and tired. And now if you're handing off and delegating to local police on a regular basis, these men and women don't have anywhere near the experience you have at protective details, if any, at all. And the rules of engagement differ in all of that. So it's not realistic to think that we can continue with the status quo here. And one of the things that needs to change is the culture as well, which is very defensive and insular. And I've been calling for, when there's a new director, coming for Secret Service. It needs to be from outside the agency.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that, because once we talked about this earlier, you try not to write the story, but your imagination does. And my fear is the wag the dog kind of a story is that while this convention is taking place in Chicago, other countries will raise the level of their war to get our attention going in that direction and take it off what's going on with the Democratic convention.
You are right. It's the old distraction thing. Hey, shiny object over here. Yeah. Well, what's happening over there? So somebody like, North Korea, Kim Jong-un, yep. Boy, would he love to raise his flag during this, right? He knows he'll have the media attention. And this is why I'm concerned with this global audience on the convention in Chicago, that some other thing will happen and even could happen outside the perimeter in another part of Chicago, because they know the world media is in town. Why not do something really horrific in another part of Chicago as well?
Well, I thought that's one of the reasons why there's going to be so many protest groups there that are coming from outside the country, because they're there to be heard and to be seen.
Yeah, they need the camera, they need the microphone, and I get it. We've got to preserve free speech and freedom of assembly. That's going to happen. What I'm more concerned about is the violent actor that says, this is my time in the spotlight, I'm going to do this. And it could be international. It could be domestic. Could be that lone actor that's so hard to detect and deter. But, I think this is in hand. I can't predict the action of foreign adversaries, except, we haven't even talked about the foreign capabilities with cyber. I mean, we've had this news this week with regard to a hack allegedly by Iran into the Trump campaign, and now the government says, hey, we've been investigating the same thing with regard to the Harris campaign. What if there is a massive cyber attack on the venue or the media equipment with regard to Chicago and the convention? Boy, that would catch a lot of attention.
Oh, the electrical grid. My God, that's always been on my mind. What happens if they can tap into that or get into the financial system? So suddenly we can't get our money.
Well, because you pay attention, that our adversaries have absolutely been in our grid. Have told us they can shut down 911. Jeez. They can shut down water power and hydroelectric dams. They've done it. They wave hello almost every day in those systems. So if they wanted to turn the lights off or the 911 system off in Chicago, yep. They can do it. The question is to what end, and are they ready for us to reciprocate?
Frank, how were you trained if there's ever utter chaos? I mean, as a martial artist, we were always trained to not put ourselves in a situation that deals with that. But no, when there is chaos, you've got to walk into the fire, Frank.
Yeah, that's particularly true for law enforcement on the street level. But I also have seen over my years of experience the wrong approach of executive and command staff, which is I sometimes shake my head when I see a chief of police launch into a crowd of chaos and wants to show his presence. That's a mistake. The command and control element needs to be away from the venue and safe, and be able to make command decisions without worrying about their own physical safety. So I know that's going on with what's called a Joint Operations Center and Joint Intelligence Center for the convention. So that's good. I don't like to see executives wading into a chaos. You've got to keep, the other thing I tell on the street agents and officers is maintain your plan, which is, and I know everybody has a plan until they're hit in the face, as the boxer Mike Tyson said famously. But you've got, go with your training and your instinct. Buddy up, stay with your partner. Don't separate. Stay on the radio. Retain your weapon if you're actually in a brutal physical battle. Get to safety soon. Your safety is more important than suppressing the chaos around you. So get that done. You're no help to anybody if you're injured or down. And they've been training. The Chicago chief has said they have spent days training all of these officers, even the out-of-town officers, on riot control and suppression and crowds. So they've got that training. I think that's going to serve them well.
Yeah. How will you study this, and what will you take from it? Because there's going to be other events right after this. So therefore, how do you prepare for something like this, Frank, and then learn as you grow forward?
Yeah, there's always going to be, what they call the after action report on any special event, and you've got to learn from it, or you're bound to repeat the mistakes. Look at the mistakes made in Butler, Pennsylvania, at the rally. So, the good news: we have a recent convention, the RNC, that went off very well. There's lots going on behind the scenes that we don't get covered in the media, that I always kind of check my sources to find out about. So what do I mean by that? There's things called knock-and talks, where if law enforcement suspects you're up to something, they'll literally knock on your door and have a little chat with you. We're on to you. And by the way, if you get on a plane, train, or bus on your way to Chicago, that could be the first step in a conspiracy charge. So maybe you shouldn't travel. They let you know they're on to you. That goes on a lot. Secret Service, by the way, has tremendous authority to detain somebody beyond the FBI's authority because he or she poses a threat to a protectee. So there are people who will find themselves, brushing their teeth in the local lockup, and then released right after the event. That's their authority, and lots of that going on right now in the intelligence field.
Wow, where can someone go to find out more about you, Frank, and to learn from you? Because you're such a great educator.
Well, I appreciate that. I do have a website. It's frankfigliuzzi.com, Figliuzzi, frankfigliuzzi.com. You can sign up for free for alerts on my appearances and my columns I write and all my NBC TV appearances. And then, I've got a book out, Long Haul, Hunting the Highway Serial Killer, true story of the FBI's hunt for long-haul truckers who are killing hundreds of women on our nation's highways. That's out there. And I'm on all over social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Thread.
Are you the guy that helped out that school when it comes to those trucking murders? Because, I've heard so many, and I've done so many interviews about these trucker murders.
I'm not that guy, but I am someone who went 2,000 miles on the road in a big rig to learn the subculture of trucking. And I cover in my book the victims, who are largely sex-trafficked women. I talk about the intelligence analysts who are connecting the dots to stop the killing. But 850 women have been murdered on our nation's highways, mostly by long-haul truckers.
Wow. We've got to get together and talk about this on a future day when we've got more time, Frank.
I'd love to do it.
Excellent.
Let's do it.
Well, you be brilliant today, okay, sir?
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.